1. Democracy. Democracy is a system of government in which sovereignty ultimately resides with the people, who exercise power either directly or through elected representatives. The term originates from ancient Greece, especially ancient Athens, where eligible citizens gathered in assemblies to debate and vote on public matters. Modern democracy, however, differs significantly from its ancient predecessor, primarily because large populations make direct participation impractical. Instead, most contemporary democracies function as representative systems, where citizens elect officials to legislate and govern on their behalf. Core principles of democracy include political equality, one person, one vote, rule of law, majority rule with minority rights protected, freedom of speech and press, regular and free elections, and institutional checks and balances to prevent abuse of power. Countries such as India, the world's largest democracy, and United States operate under democratic constitutions that outline citizen rights and government responsibilities. Democracies often promote accountability because leaders must answer to voters and can be replaced peacefully through elections. They also encourage political pluralism, allowing multiple parties and viewpoints to compete. However, democracy faces challenges including political polarization, misinformation, influence of money in politics, slow legislative processes, and the risk of populism where leaders appeal to emotions rather than reason. Despite its imperfections, democracy remains widely valued for protecting individual freedoms and allowing peaceful transfers of power. 2. Republic is a form of government in which the state is considered a public matter, from the Latin res publica, and the head of state is not a hereditary monarch, but an elected or appointed official. While many republics are democratic, the defining feature of a republic is the absence of hereditary rule, rather than the presence of full popular participation. In republics, authority derives from a constitution or legal framework that establishes the rights of citizens and the structure of government institutions. For example, France operates as a republic with an elected president and parliament, governed by constitutional law. Historically, early republics, such as the Roman Republic, emphasized civic duty, representation, and separation of powers, concepts that strongly influence modern political systems. Republics typically feature checks and balances between branches of government, executive, legislative, and judicial, to prevent concentration of power. However, not all republics are liberal democracies. Some maintain electoral systems while restricting opposition parties or civil liberties. Thus, a republic may range from a fully participatory democracy to a more controlled or authoritarian state structure. The strength of a republic lies in its legal foundations and the principle that governance is a public trust, not a personal inheritance. 3. Monarchy. Monarchy is a political system in which a single individual, usually called a king, queen, or emperor, serves as head of state, typically through hereditary succession. Historically, monarchies were among the most common forms of government, often justified by religious or divine right doctrines that portrayed the monarch as chosen by God. One of the most famous examples of absolute monarchy was the reign of Louis XIV, who centralized authority and famously declared, "I am the state." Modern monarchies, however, are usually constitutional, meaning the monarch's powers are limited by law and democratic institutions. For instance, the United Kingdom retains a monarch as a ceremonial head of state, while elected officials exercise political authority. In contrast, some states such as Saudi Arabia maintain stronger monarchical control over governance. Monarchies can provide continuity, stability, and symbolic unity for a nation, as royal families often represent historical identity and tradition. However, hereditary succession raises questions about merit and accountability, especially in absolute systems where citizens have little influence over leadership. 4. Authoritarianism. Authoritarianism is a form of government characterized by strong, centralized power and limited political freedoms. In authoritarian systems, political opposition is restricted, civil liberties may be curtailed, and media often operates under state influence or control. Unlike totalitarian regimes, authoritarian governments may allow limited economic freedom or social autonomy, but political power remains tightly controlled by a leader or elite group. Elections may occur, but are often manipulated to ensure the ruling authority remains in power. An example often cited is Belarus, where political competition is constrained and leadership remains highly centralized. Authoritarian governments often justify their rule by emphasizing order, stability, economic development, or national security. They may deliver rapid infrastructure projects or policy implementation because they face fewer legislative obstacles. However, the absence of transparency and checks on power increases the risk of corruption, abuse, and human rights violations. Citizens may lack meaningful avenues to challenge leadership decisions, which can lead to public unrest over time. 5. Totalitarianism. Totalitarianism represents one of the most extreme forms of centralized authority, where the government seeks to control virtually every aspect of public and private life. Totalitarian states enforce a single official ideology, often driven by a charismatic leader, and utilize propaganda, censorship, secret police, and surveillance to maintain dominance. Historical examples include Nazi Germany under Adolf Hitler and the Soviet Union during the leadership of Joseph Stalin. In such regimes, political dissent is not merely discouraged but criminalized, and citizens are expected to conform ideologically. The state often controls economic production, education, media, and cultural life. Totalitarian governments aim not only to govern behavior, but also to shape beliefs and thoughts, creating a society aligned entirely with state ideology. While such systems can mobilize resources rapidly and enforce sweeping changes, they often produce fear, repression, and large-scale human rights abuses. 6. Dictatorship. A dictatorship is a system in which absolute power is concentrated in the hands of a single individual who governs without constitutional limitations or democratic accountability. Dictators often come to power through coups, revolutions, or manipulation of political institutions. Unlike constitutional leaders, dictators are not bound by checks and balances and may rule indefinitely. In North Korea, leadership under Kim Jong-un demonstrates many characteristics associated with dictatorship, including centralized authority, suppression of dissent, and strong state control. Dictatorships may rely on military support, political patronage networks, or personality cults to sustain power. Supporters sometimes argue that dictatorship can bring swift reforms or national unity during crises, but critics highlight the dangers of repression, lack of transparency, and absence of political rights.